Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle and this is Easily Knitfluenced. This is my 2024 recap, everything I knit in 2024 video. This is coming out a little late, better late than never, as I say. Reason being, if you watch my channel, you know I was actually away in Japan for a little while at the end of the year, but also before I went to Japan, so I think maybe 3 or 4 days before Christmas, I got the flu. So I had all these plans to kind of pre-film stuff and get it done and kind of have it scheduled to release before I got back from Japan. That did not happen because I was in bed and feeling pretty atrocious and sorry for myself. I am mostly recovered now. You can hear I still have a little bit of nasal something going on. So bear with me, but I am well enough now to film, obviously. So yeah, this is going to be one of those typical recap videos. I should say up front, I will not be going over too much here on construction and those types of details on these projects. If you want to check that out, obviously go back through my catalog. You can find more in-depth podcasts on all of that stuff. This is more kind of my general recap, my thoughts on the projects overall, things I would change, have I worn them? If not, why have I not worn them? So just kind of general impressions as opposed to like the nitty gritty sort of stuff about construction. And I'm actually kind of glad I'm doing this because as I was going through my pictures, because I am terrible about Ravelry, one of the things I want to get better at this year, I don't really track things on Ravelry properly or sometimes at all, which is bad. But anyway, I was going through my pictures and there were things in there that I kind of completely forgot that I'd made, like stuff I made for my kids. So this is kind of a nice recap, I think. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here is my first project of the year. I finished this in, I think, literally a week. This is the Breather Sweater by Lisa Cameri. It comes in all sorts of kid sizes. Really cute pattern. You can see there's sort of a garter section up here on the front. There's these adorable little elbow patchy garter sections on the sleeves. Very easy knit. It's a kind of just a typical raglan, so you work your increases to the underarms. I will say, I probably wouldn't use this yarn again. So, Cascade 220, it seems to be one that everybody loves. There's a zillion different colors. That's all amazing. I think, I probably just picked the wrong yarn for this project because this just didn't stand up to the wear that a 3-year-old was going to give it. So, you can see there's a lot of pilling. On the plus side, it is a superwash, so it's washable, which is great. But yeah, it's I need to depill this guy because it has pilled. I mean, you can see here that's like pretty extreme pilling. So all good, but probably not the yarn I would choose for, a 3-year-old. So maybe something a little more rustic next time. But yeah, a really cute pattern, very cute, very easy, very quick, depending on the size of the kid that you are knitting for. But yeah, for, my 3-year-old, this took me all of a week, I think. And I completely forgot about it until I started looking through my Instagram pictures and I said, oh, yeah, I did make that in 2024. So this was my first finished object. Okay, now for the rest of these, I am gonna try to go in somewhat chronological order. Again, because I don't do Ravelry notes, I do not have an exact feel of when I finish these things, but roughly I know when I finish them. So the next one is actually an item I don't have with me anymore because it was a gift knit. This was the Folklore Cardigan by Amy Gunderson. I gave this to my sister-in-law, who's a huge Swiftie, for her birthday last year in March. And I knit this out of Madeline Tosh DK, which is the recommended yarn. It's a superwash DK weight yarn. And I use the recommended main color, which is Horn. And I'll put in some pictures here so you can see, but it's sort of a kind of a dappled white with flecks of blue. But instead of the green contrast color that the pattern suggests, I actually used a blue, which was Nocturne, really to pick up on the blue in the white yarn. So, this was a labor-intensive project. It is knit flat in pieces, which is a construction that I'd never done before, and then you seam those pieces together again. So I had never seamed before. all of that was fine. It just took a lot of time. It was fine to do. I got through it. It's kind of quite an engaging knit, I would say, because each panel, has moss stitch, it has cables, it has kind of mock cables. There's a lot going on, which kind of at least kept my attention. And, I didn't find it boring at any point. It is a lot to knit, flat especially, but it was interesting, right? It was an interesting knit. The one thing I will say about this pattern, and it wasn't an issue in this case because the cardigan fit the recipient just fine. The gauge and sizing on this was a bit of a mystery to me. So I remember swatching for this and meeting gauge. So the swatch, it instructs you to swatch in the moss stitch, which I did, and it was fine. But once I started, actually seaming this thing together, it all looked a little smaller than I thought, especially actually the underarm. So that was a bit of a worry for me. Again, it fit the recipient fine, but when I put it on, I was like, this is snugger than I would like in my underarm. So yeah, the gauge, if you knit this pattern, I guess gauge swatch really carefully, and maybe kind of compare as you start to knit one of the big panels if your gauge swatch is actually still matching, because I have a feeling once I started on the big panels with the cables and everything that kind of like scrunched stuff together, it just wasn't. And I don't think I accounted for the fact that seaming obviously like cinches stuff together a lot more. So yeah, maybe size up a little bit. That would be my advice if you're knitting this one. I definitely did not get the positive ease that the pattern was saying that the garment should have. It turned out to be fine, but yeah, the sizing was a little iffy on this one. Oh, and one note I will say in credit to the yarn, I was a little bit worried about bleeding since the blue color is very, very dark blue and the white is very white, but no issues. I washed all of these things on a gentle cycle in my washing machine and they were completely fine. So at least this color combination that I use, so Horn and Nocturne, no color bleeding at all. Okay, next up, we have the Peggy Sweater by Lena Holmes Samso, and I'll kind of hold it back so you guys can see here. I love this piece. So this is by Lena Holmes Samso, also known as Lee Knits, and I knit this out of, I'm just looking at my notes here, this was the Sandnes Garn Sunday and the matching mohair in the color 8236, which is this beautiful emerald green color. I love greens. I'd wanted to make something in green for quite some time. So this is an all over texture pattern. I think around this time, Petite Knit had, or maybe right as I was making this, Petite Knit had released her first all over texture pattern. But I really loved this one because of the baubles. So I'd never done little baubles before. These are very subtle. They're not kind of too in your face. So if you kind of like the concept of baubles, but you don't want gigantic ones all over your garments, I think this is a nice option. It's a DK weight sweater, so none of these are going to be like in your face huge. But again, a very engaging knit because you've got all these panels and sort of sections. So really potato chippy. You kind of, keep wanting to move on to the next section. And the construction of this is pretty simple. It's a classic drop shoulder, nothing really too crazy there. I will say I liked the pattern writing on this a lot. This was one of the first like charted patterns that I knit, and the chart is really quite ingenious. So unlike some of the petite knit patterns I've seen where she has like 10 charts kind of for different parts of the garment, this actually really only had, I think, one or two. And it kind of tells you how to do the decreases within the charted pattern in a really kind of ingenious way. So I remember thinking, oh, wow, this is very efficiently done, but not in a way that makes it confusing or difficult to follow. So big props to the pattern writer. I think she, excuse me, big props to the designer. I think she did a great job writing this pattern. So this is a beautiful garment. I think if there were one thing I'd change, it's the collar. So this is it's just a simple collar. It's not folded over. And I gotta be honest, I think one of the things I learned from this year is I don't love the kind of just, I guess, single layer collar. I find it just looks a little flimsy on after a while. So if I were to change anything in this, it would be to switch out that collar for a double folded one. And you'll see that I'm going to mention that in a couple patterns that I made this year and a couple of finished objects. You know, on the hanger, it looks fine. It's just something about once it's on the body, it looks a little unfinished, if that's the right word. And, you know, if you think about like most commercial, you know, store-bought items, typically they don't have a kind of a single layer as a collar. And I mean, like if you look at the one I'm wearing right now, this is a Natum sweater. Um, it's a very fine gauge, but you know, it is a folded over neckline. So yeah, that's one thing. And you know, if I kind of maybe enter a like a sweater surgery phase, that might be something that I go back and fix in a couple of these if I can get more yarn. Because yeah, it does bother me a little bit that I don't love how the collar's sitting. And you know, it's like when you look in the mirror, it's like right there, right? So you know, food for thought. I think if that's something that bothers you, you know, it should be a pretty easy thing to modify as you're knitting this. But you know, beautiful pattern nonetheless. I love this sweater. I wear it a lot. It's a really gorgeous pattern. All right, here is a pattern that does not have that collar problem. So this is the Stockholm Sweater by Petite Knit, and this has a beautiful folded over collar. And in fact, the whole reason I picked this pattern was for the shape of the collar. So I went through her whole catalog of, I guess what I'll call like basic sweaters, you know, just ones that are either raglans or drop shoulders. This is a drop shoulder, and I wanted to find one that had this kind of scoop neck look. And this is the one. So it's a very simple pattern, you know, typical petite knit. But interestingly, this collar, it looks round, right? When you're looking at it on the screen here, when you actually knit it, it's almost like there's kind of almost square sections to it before you pick up the stitches to start knitting that collar section. So it's a very interesting shape, very interesting construction. I knit this out of this was Purl Soho Nigh DK in the color Raindrop Blue, which is a 100% cashmere. I've worn this quite a bit, and this has not pilled yet. So Nigh DK is an expensive yarn, but I think at least in this case, it's performed really well. I've worn this a bunch of times to work or just to wear at home, under jackets, and you know, I'm looking at the underarm here. I mean, I really don't see really any pilling yet. So yeah, a lovely yarn. And I don't know if you can see on camera, it looks just kind of periwinkle blue, but in person it's a little more heathered. So love this pattern. This is one of her older patterns, I think. I don't think it's a recent one, but it's typical petite knit, you know, well written, very clear. Uh, the sizing is really good. So, you know, this fits me kind of exactly the way I wanted it to. And one of the things I will say though is the sleeve does taper quite a bit. So if you prefer a looser sleeve, just be aware of that. This does kind of come to quite a tight kind of end here. So I was fine with that. I kind of wanted that look and looked at the sample pictures and stuff. But if you prefer a looser fit, you know, maybe do less decreases. But other than that, I mean, this was a perfect pattern. I wear this a ton. I think yarn and pattern were a success, so really love this. Big fan. Now we're getting into summer knits. Here is the Vest Taipei by Mochi Knits. I knit this out of 2 strands of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the color Mole, or Mole. So a beautiful pattern. Mochi Knits was a new to me designer, so this is the first pattern that I attempted by her. It's a really, again, it's kind of a, you know, classic construction in the back here. You start in the back, pick up for the front, and it's this sort of alternating cables and kind of column type design. Really a great pattern to knit. It was a quick knit. It was a very clearly written pattern. Absolutely no complaints on the pattern. I will say I'm going to make that same complaint about the collar here. So, you know, I think part of this is like I didn't pick up the stitches that well here. I think it just looks a little uneven. And if I compare especially to the armhole sections here, which are folded over, I just prefer the way this looks so much more. So this is another one where if I have the time and inclination to go back and fix this and do a little surgery on it, I absolutely would, because again, on the hanger it looks okay. In person it starts to like look a little gapey and a bit uneven around here, especially after a couple of wears. So that's one comment. I will also say mochi knits, at least the patterns I have from her, uh, I guess they're a little more modern in that they're quite cropped. So I actually knit this to longer than the pattern suggested, and it's still real cropped on me. I have a long torso, so there's that too, but this is like, you know, skimming the top of my jeans kind of cropped. So, you know, by the time I was kind of finishing up with this, I was already I had already bought extra yarn for it. I didn't really want to buy more extra yarn because my local yarn store didn't carry this color. I would have had to order it from Denmark, from like Knitting for Olive itself. So, you know, I decided, okay, I'm cool with the length. It looks great with jeans or with like high-waisted shorts or something. But I think again, if I were to make this pattern again, I'd probably, you know, add like another 2 inches to this because that would be my preferred length, I think. But otherwise, it's a beautiful pattern. Really can't say anything negative about it. The yarn worked out really well. I'm such a fan of the cotton merino from Knitting for Olive. It works well held double as well if you kind of want that more DK sort of range. So yeah, other than that, really nothing to complain about here. But yeah, this was my first summer knit of the year. So this is not a summer knit, but I did knit it during the summer. This is the Emile beanie by Bluebird Pine Shop. So I knit this out of stash yarn, actually. This is a Madeline Tosh, let me just get this right, ASAP super bulky superwash merino in the color Dustweaver, which is this kind of tonal whitish purple. I'd had this yarn for a decade, probably. It was sort of an impulse buy at some point. I bought a bunch of skeins of it and then didn't really use it for anything. And I got gauge on this project with this. So yeah, it's a very cute, I mean, it's very like super squishy, really warm. This was very impulsive. I kind of cast this on because I had the yarn. I'm like, I want to do something with this. But the pattern is really cool. It has sizes from kids to, I mean, this is an adult size. And it has this really awesome, like, double cable kind of crisscrossing, and then this lovely flower leaf motif, which is a lot easier than it looks. I remember I was knitting this kind of while watching a movie in almost darkness. And I think my father-in-law was here and he's like, I do not know how you're able to do that in the dark. But yeah, that's how easy this is. It's really not difficult at all once you kind of get the rhythm of it and you memorize the pattern a little bit. I might add a pom-pom to this. I don't know. I'm not sure. It is quite a tall hat, so I don't know if I want to add more height to it. But it's a very cool pattern. I think you could make this work on a bulky yarn even, because this is quite dense. I think you could probably go for something a little lighter if you have some yarn lying around. But yeah, this was an impulse cast on. I'm very happy with it. All right, here we have the Eva Cardigan by Petite Knit. You will notice there are no buttons on this. I have no excuse for that other than I've just been too lazy to put them on. So this I finished at some point during the summer. I mean, this was kind of a long project. I started it in the fall of 2023, I want to say. So it did languish a little bit while I worked on other things, but I did eventually finish it. I knit this out of two yarns. One is, the main yarn is Illimani Santi Tweed in the color Pineapple, and I held that with the Isager Silk Mohair in the color 22. So it's this kind of speckled but gorgeous chartreusey color. It's lovely. Now, what I'll say about this pattern, it's a petite knit pattern with the contiguous shoulder shaping. So hopefully you can see what I mean there. It's this shaping of the shoulder, which I think mimics a set-in sleeve. So it's a raglan, but with that contiguous shaping. It is really, really a nice construction, and it fits very beautifully on the body. Now, what I will say about this project, or this yarn, the yarn has a lot of alpaca in it. And I did not know this about myself, but mohair doesn't bother me. There is something about alpaca and the kind of not the prickle because it's soft. Like it's a very soft yarn, but there's something about the density of alpaca that, at least just on skin for me, feels very itchy and bothersome. So this is like I initially when I knit this, I thought I will just wear this as, you know, like buttoned up as like a pullover. That, and the reason I haven't put buttons on it is I just wasn't able to wear it that way. It's just too, it's too present and itchy for me. So I've only really worn it with, you know, long sleeve tops or short sleeve tops even underneath it. So it not having buttons has not been as much of an issue as I thought it would be. I will add buttons to this. I'm not going to let it sit like this forever. But it's a gorgeous pattern. You know, classic petite knit. It's beautiful. I would knit this pattern again, probably in a different yarn, maybe something a little lighter and easier to wear. But I love the color. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's not similar to this color, but you know, in the range of like oranges and yellows, I really love this. It goes well with like a black top, black jeans, that kind of thing. But it's probably one of my less worn items just because of the yarn I chose. And I really like touching it with my hands. It feels silky soft and beautiful, but there's something about it when I put it on my skin, the alpaca, like it's the alpaca. There's something about it that is bothersome to me, which is too bad. But I can still wear it with tops underneath, so you know, absolutely not a total loss or anything. Just, you know, I can't really wear it the way I intended initially. Now we are boarding the Ozetta train. This is the Lakes Tee by Ozetta. Oh, there's a little bit of yarn coming out there. I gotta fix that. This is the Lakes Tee by Ozetta. I knit this in a single strand of Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Pomegranate. I, if you've watched my channel, you'll know I've become slightly unhealthily obsessed with Ozetta. This is the first pattern I knit by her. It's a saddle shoulder kind of short sleeve top, but I knit this as more of like a short sleeve sweater. So this is really great for those transitional seasons. So spring, fall, when there's a little bit of a chill in the air, but it's not so cold that you need to like be totally wrapped up in a sweater. This works great under jackets. It works great with jeans. It's a fantastic pattern. She is probably one of my favorite pattern writers right now. You know, Petite Knit obviously has her empire and everything, but Ozetta just has, there's something about her style. It's like quite minimalist, but like with nice details. So this was the first saddle shoulder I did. I just love how this looks. Like it's such a clean line. It looks so, like just so polished. The folded over collar also looks just, it's just beautifully designed. So yeah, I mean, her patterns are amazing. This is probably one of my most worn knits ever, right? And I only made it last summer. So, you know, that kind of tells you like how much I enjoy wearing this, how versatile this pattern is. And it's like a bright color, but you know, to me, controversial opinion maybe, I feel like red is kind of a neutral. Like to me, it goes with everything. It looks good on basically everybody. So I love this. I wore this a ton during the year, and once the weather gets a little warmer here, I intend to wear it again. It's just a wonderful pattern. It's a wonderful fit. She really knows what she's doing. Okay, we're still continuing on the Ozetta train. This is, hang on, let me fix this a little bit. So this is the Moonset Tee. So another summer knit. This is a single strand of Knitting for Olive cotton merino. Cotton merino? Yes, cotton merino in the color Koala. So it's this very beautiful light gray, bluey gray color. So again, a gorgeous construction. This collar really drew me to this. You'll see I've done the pullover as well. I love this collar construction. You kind of look at it, it looks so complicated. But as you read through the pattern, you'll see it's just, it's so simple. It comes together so beautifully, so naturally. This again is, I wore this a ton. This was one of my most worn as well. And then yeah, this has the I-cord bind off instead of the ribbing. So a little bit more of a casual kind of fit from her, but still very polished. I mean, you can tuck this into a skirt or something. It totally works for work or an office environment. Yeah, just beautiful. I'm obsessed. The whole Moonset collection I'm really into. I love the V-neck. It's just a perfect fit. I'm just noticing it's a little creased now. Should probably steam that out. But in any case, Yeah, the more things I made from Ozetta this year, the more I was like, wow, it just she just knocks it out of the park every time, and like somehow it's always looking simple but polished, which is exactly what I want to see. Okay, then another accessory, and one I do not have with me because my son is actually wearing it and he's playing outside right now. This is the Manhattan hat by Tori Yu, so Tori Knits NYC. So I'll insert some pictures. I used again, a decade old Madeline Tosh Superwash worsted yarn for this one. So this is the worsted version of the pattern. She has a couple different versions of this, I think, in different yarn weights. So, take a look based on your preference. This was a really fun, easy knit. I think, again, this took me maybe a week, maybe a little longer. Yeah, very, very easy and a really cute construction. So, if you want a basic beanie hat, I think this one works. And she has, all different sizes, from kid all the way through to adult. My son has a big head, so this is technically an adult size, actually. But it fits him perfectly. He loves it. So yeah, I think really happy with this one. I am planning to probably knit one of these for myself as well, because it was really fun, and I have a bunch of worsted yarn kind of sitting in my stash, so may as well reuse the pattern. Okay, next we have this is the Harris hood by Cheryl Mokhtari, or Cocoa More Knitwear. I'm not going to put it on because I think it's going to mess with my mic, but this I wanted something kind of slouchy, and guess what? I got it. I think I put it in my podcast where I talked about finishing this object that I was worried it was going to make me look like a medieval executioner. It doesn't. It does look like really nice and slouchy, like it does in the sample pictures. But before I blocked it, I was like, ooh, this looks maybe not like what I intended. But it's okay. It turned out great. I knit this in a single strand of Purl Soho Plenty, which is 100% merino, and the color was Smoky Taupe. So beautiful stitch definition. It's a really squishy yarn. Again, I've worn this multiple times when it's really cold outside. Perfect alternative to if you don't want to keep track of a scarf all night long. Put it up and down and it just kind of hangs out around your neck. It's perfect, but it's not like a cowl, which also, I don't know, I've just never agreed with cowls. Like they kind of just don't really know how to wear them well. Yeah, so anyway, this is great. I love this. I would knit this again, and I think she actually came out with a new hood, which is more like it's either a brioche or like a broken rib type pattern. So I might check that out as well. But I think that just got released, or maybe it was like just in testing. But yes, this is lovely. Highly recommend. If you do use this yarn, beware, it grows a ton, like a ton. This like stretched out, I mean, vertically stretched out to a very surprising degree. And I actually have this yarn in red that I have it intended for the cardigan, the jacket number 9. I'll put it, I forget, one of the jackets from My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I am going to really measure and be careful with it because I don't want that to turn out too long. This grew it kind of to a crazy degree, which is good because it kind of gave me that slouchy look, but I think for a garment, you might want to be careful with this yarn because it will absolutely expand and grow. Last but not least, this was my last finished object of the year. I finished this right before I came down with the mother of all flus. This is Ozetta's Moonset Pullover. So just the long sleeve version of the other top I showed you. And this is at a DK gauge as opposed to fingering, which was the top. So I knit this out of Knitting for Olive Merino and the matching soft silk mohair in the color Bordeaux. Again, a beautiful fit. I took this to Japan with me. I wore it there. It's a lovely yarn. I wear this next to skin. Again, like with mohair, I just don't have a problem. It's not. I've never really felt an issue with it. It's just that alpaca. So this wore next to skin. I've traveled with it. I love it. It's just so versatile. It's so easy. I wore this with jeans. I wore it with skirts. I will probably wear this to work with black pants or something. I mean, it just works. It's polished, it's beautiful, the V-neck works, it's not too deep, it's not too shallow. Genius. I love her. I'm working on another project by her currently, so you'll see that in my next knitting podcast, or my excuse me, my next whips podcast. So yeah, this is the last one I finished in the year. So that's that, guys. That was 2024. I feel like I got quite a lot done, but not a crazy amount, right? I think it's important, and I'm just kind of going to say this in closing. I think it's important when you watch these videos not to compare yourself and your output to other people out there who have, just more time and more available sort of, downtime, knitting time than maybe you do, right? Like for myself, I work full time, I have two small children. Those two things keep me busy most of the time, right? So I am not going to be the type of knitter, I think, who can pump out like 40 projects in a year. I mean, unless they're all like, I don't know, fingerless mitts or something. Like maybe I could do that. But, garments, like they take time. I am not an especially fast knitter. I'd say, probably average. So I think it's important, not to compare yourself because there are people out there who just have a ton of time on their hands. And that's great. And, maybe they're really fast knitters and they can just like crank out 5 or 6 projects a month. That's awesome. Good for them. But you don't have to be that way. So maybe you're more like me and you just have a lot going on and it's sort of a busy phase of life. And that's fine too. So, be happy with whatever it is you produce this year. I certainly am. I'm very happy with all the things I produced. And, they're all things that I am wearing, some more than others, and I think I'll take my learnings from that into 2025. But overall, very happy with how all of this turned out. So that's it for this video, guys. I will be back with more regularly scheduled programming, just updates on my whips and, all that good stuff. Now that I no longer have the flu and I'm not traveling. So I'm home now, so there'll be more of that coming. Stay tuned to the next one. But thank you so much, as always, for joining. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.